Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for joining us. Today we have an update with Xali Gold. President and CEO Joanne Freeze is with us today. This morning, the company released results from the Pico Machay project, and the format of the session will be an update from Joanne, followed by Q&A. If you have questions, please enter those into the Q&A box at the bottom of your screen. And before we begin, as always, the presentation will contain forward-looking statements. If you'd like to learn more about those, you can find them in the presentation on the company's website. And welcome, Joanne. It's good to see you again.
Thank you very much, and thank you everybody who's attending. Okay, we're going to talk about Pico Machay today. As you know, it's advanced exploration stage, a gold project with a great historical resource, near-term production goal, and lots of exploration potential. Magda already mentioned the disclaimer. Forward-looking statements are part of our business. If you're not understanding that, please let us know. So we're located in a proven gold belt, high sulfidation system. You can see on the map here how many there are in Peru. They're very famous. Yanacocha being the largest 50 million ounce largest gold mine in South America. I think one of the largest open pit gold mines in the world. Pierina was very famous as well. Discovery in the 90s, sold to Barrick. And several other smaller projects that are more similar to us, very successful. And you can see we have got a large alteration zone. So we have, at Pico Machay, we purchased it because it's got significant historical work, which provides, of course, a very strong foundation. We've got underground access of several workings that were excavated during 2020, mostly during COVID. And so that's really helped us get grade verification and also some bulk and sampling for metallurgy. Sampling of the historical resource on surface and in new underground access has shown us that we're getting higher grades, and I could even say much higher grades than were necessarily anticipated. Now, part of that could be because most of all of the resource was estimated by reverse circulation drilling, which gives you very small chips, and it's harder to get your average gold grade there. You also can wash gold down the hole. One of the very compelling aspects of this project is that Junior Aquiline Resources made a production decision in 2008, 2009 when gold was at $700 an ounce. So obviously we have strong leverage to current prices, and being 4,000 or more. We don't need $4,000 gold by any stretch to make this economic. So we're looking at the opportunity to start with a phase one leach operation, very similar to what Aquiline had planned. The only thing we would add to that was a bit of crushing. They were going to do run of mill, and we're estimating recoveries to be at least 70%. We're hoping to improve on that, but 70% is what we're using based on MET testing to date. And there's still an opportunity to move to a mill after that. You get much higher recoveries, but it is more capex. But of course, the idea is that would come out of cash flow. And really, we're valuing this project today on what we think we can get out of phase one, because that's more the sure thing. Multiple exploration targets have been identified beyond the historical resource. And we're in the middle of early stage permitting and technical work to support the development, construction, and production. And that's our goal, is to get to production, but also explore at the same time as we're getting to production and maybe after. And we have a second agreement with the local community of Santa Ana. They're very strong with their support in our continued advancement of the project. Here you can see the area of the project and surrounded by other mines or mining projects. So it's great to be in a district where communities and government and such are used to mining, and very historically. Several mines I've named here. Excellent access by paved roads. As you can see, this is the nearest little town, about 200 people near us, although it houses about 200 and it has a municipal center. It probably has a lot less than that number of people on an average daily basis. The whole area is sparsely populated. We have water available for mining, and also electricity for the heap leach is readily available. Attractive economics since 2008, using $700 gold. From 96 to 2009, exploration was done by several juniors, which led Aquiline, who was the owner by 2008 and 9. Prior to that, also 2005, they did most of the resource work. So that led them to a production decision at $700 gold, and did an engineering study. They did a full feasibility study. They did they did all of condemnation drilling, half of their EIA 4 in operation. And so they were well on their way. They ended up getting bought out by Pan American Silver for a large silver discovery in Argentina. And Pico Machay sat on the wayside as Pan Am had bigger fish to fry at the time. Historical resource estimate measured and indicated 264,600 ounces and inferred 446,000. And again, all at $700 gold. So just a higher gold price today would give a lower cutoff and lead to a larger resource. But here you can see the resource. So starting with the measured area of 0.91 and average gram per ton on that resource. Upside potential, not only just because of prices of gold, but also exploration targets that have been identified. Several were identified by Aquiline, but we have further delineated several others and put more priority on some of the ones we've identified recently. But everything Aquiline had also identified we will be looking at. Here's a close-up of where we've been getting the higher grades in underground and also surface trenching. So from the surface trenching, we were able to, the news release this morning, we've identified almost 14 grams, 13.76 over 4.5 meters from a surface channel that came above the old workings, but they're not really old workings, but the underground workings sitting right here on the edge, about 40 meters above it. So that again confirms what we are seeing from underground with almost 3 grams per ton, gold per ton, grams per ton, over 31.5 meters. And then the other grades we had released before from underground, we called underground channel sampling or surface channel sampling. Again, you can see 2.22 over 45 meters and 4 grams over 20 meters. And I won't read all these numbers to you, but we're very excited about getting these kind of samples. And you can see some of these numbers here, 3.7, 5.7, 4.2, 6, so actually 8.2 and such. Some very nice high grades in this whole area here. And so that's really supporting that we could be getting higher grades in our resource as we move forward with diamond drilling and more bulk sampling. Now, exploration upside. Here are the targets that we've identified recently. There's actually 10 of them. And some of them, though, as I said, correspond or overlap with what Aquiline had. But we found more evidence for if we overlapped with Aquiline and we liked it, then it's red. It's not one or the other, but in other cases, there's some ones that Aquiline had identified that we don't understand as well yet. So the red ones are the ones we would move forward with first and are more excited about, but certainly everything will be looked at. A subvolcanic here has some mineralization on the edge, but we're getting some good gold grades all the way up here over 2 grams. And there's some galleries or underground channel samples we've done in underground workings. Some are drifts, some are adits that don't go that far, but they all have some depth to them and some underground component that shows you a lot more than you would just see from a rock chip sample on surface. And so the furthest northeast one is here, number 8, and the furthest southwest is down here, and that's number 10. And then this does not have any underground workings, but there's several workings in this area, and of course in the area where the higher grades, as you can see. So that the pink are the over 2 grams and the red are greater than 1 gram. And here you can see the structural controls we've traced here, and we believe these are following to the southwest in these red zones. So the blue and the yellow, these are all just structural zones. We call them structural zones 1, 2, and 3 at this moment, but these are very much more clearly outlined. 1 and 2, 3 is what we're seeing in some outcrops, and as you can see, some very nice grades coming out of those over here, and lots of good grades over here as well. So basically, the resource, I also want to point that out, the surface area of the resource, and that's surface expression. So you've seen a lot of our saying resource drilling, which would be in a bigger area, but this is just where we believe the surface expression of the resource is about 750 meters long by about 150 meters wide. We're hoping to expand that, especially to the south here where we have lots of anomalies. So we collected 197 samples. 67 of those have greater than a half gram. So that's pretty good, I think, for all our sampling. And I would like to mention that when we do what we call these surface samples, all these dots you're seeing here, we called those, our geologists call them samples of a grid, on a grid, muestras de malla. And what that means is they put a grid on the ground and they try and do sporadic sampling based on grid spacing. But those samples are not grab samples or select samples or small samples. They're over 2 meters or 3 meters or areas that even a meter in a circle or in a length, just to show what kind of grade is getting in the whole outcrop, not just of one particular small vein necessarily. Now they will sample a good looking small vein, but that's not most of what we're showing in our results. And so based on the underground workings now from the northeast to the southwest, we're seeing a distance of 1.35 kilometers. And this way it would be just on 830 meters. And here's zooming in again on the surface expression of the resource and all the targets we're seeing around it. And of course, all the nice grades we're getting in mostly underground, but also surface sampling here. I already showed you that. And just to more overview, we knew we had alteration over an extensive area and some gold geochem, but now to see it in underground workings really establishes much more validity. I'm not saying all of this will be connected in one zone, but a lot of these zones that you find in outcrop to the point where you can go underground on it, that's a pretty substantial structure, and often that will connect to the other bigger areas. So there's a lot to be found here, and we're very excited about that. And then here you can see the current central drilling zone that has been drilled, and then some future potential at depth. There's 3 gram material at depth. This was from some of Aqualine's very early work, even Absolute, which was pre-Aquiline, got absolved by them. But this is okay, it's just to show you that we do have some other targets as well that are based on historical work. So exploration upside, it's a very classic style of mineralization, looks very much like samples from Yanacocha, Pierina, and this is native sulfur in vugs, very fine-grained gold in a massive silica, and then alteration oxide that you can see. And so mineralization is in fractures and disseminated, typical of high sulfidation and related to advanced argillic and vuggy silica alteration. And a lot of the samples that were taken in those various underground workings, most of them had some kind of vuggy silica and or advanced argillic alteration. So as I've said, very similar to very large deposits, and lots of additional exploration targets. Some are related to intrusive centers. We do have some more felsic subvolcanics and dikes mapped so far. We are creating a new geological map based on our re-logging of the chips and, of course, our sampling and mapping in underground, because we believe we can have a better idea on the controls to the high grade. So using gold at Leven plus 2800, gives the potential to lower the cutoff and increase we believe at least 1 million ounces just in the resource, that's the historic resource. And then we have a target of finding another 1 million ounces, at least on all those other exploration targets. So our action plan, of course, we got the due diligence done and completed the purchase of Minera Calapui for Pico Machay by the end of December, raised the money we needed for the first payment. Underground and surface sampling we've been working on has verified historical grades and even potentially better. This says results pending. That's pretty much done now. It says check, so that means that they're in. Commence baseline studies. Now we've done most of the work for that. We're hoping to submit that to the government when they're finished inaugurating their new president this week and get back to the office. But we're pretty much ready to submit it. We just need meetings with the government now. Then we have done some bulk sampling for met testing, and we will do more. And we'll get started on some of the longer lead time testing that should be done, not for PEA, but for feasibility. And we do have a lot of met testing, but of course we want to do our own. Then next step is we want to be drilling for the resource update and upgrade. So we'll be twinning 10% of the resource holes. That will only take us 2,000 meters of drilling, but we do plan 3,000 meters for the first phase so that we have some extra after we're finished twinning 10% of the 20,000 that was drilled, 20,000 meters. We'll still have 1,000 meters to play with in testing areas that we like to see what kind of chasing some high grades, let's call it, and just figuring out the controls to the high grade. And then once that's done, we'll update the resource to a NI, it's 43101 compliant using currently accepted gold prices. And as soon as that's done, then we can update our PEA. And we've already done a lot of internal engineering work. So we expect to be able to do the PEA within a couple of months of the resource being updated. And then we will be with the FTA permit that we're applying for right now, we actually can drill up to 20,000 meters. So it's 20 platforms, but you can drill as many holes as you like from a platform. And so we're estimating approximately 4 holes per platform and have laid out drilling for 20,000 meters, which could test many of those exploration targets nearer to the resource, not the ones furthest northeast and furthest southwest. That would take a further permit. So that's what we talk about here, further permit for drilling exploration targets. And of course, commencing the network and looking at potential to improve recoveries. Loving to show you the photographs so you see that we have a lot of the mineralization outcropping. All of these craggy rocks are the massive silica, but all of the ore body does not outcrop. So just because you don't see that in outcrop does not mean we don't have gold underneath. And again, some of the craggy outcrops. Our schedule, we're very cognizant of trying to be in production. We gave ourselves from December a goal of 3.5 years. We're working on that. But what that means is that we have to be doing permitting and regulatory EIA work at the same time as our exploration. And of course, community engagement never stops. So talking about sampling underground and surface, we've already done a lot of that, but that will continue. And then grade confirmation drilling initially, then surface exploration drilling, and then eventually more condemnation, because as I said, Aquiline already did that for the leach pad sites. But further that, and of course, geotech and geomechanical drilling. And then once we upgrade the resource, update and potentially upgrade it, then we'll also do an updated PEA, which is part of the feasibility. Really, it's all going to be the same study. We're not gonna, we'll publish as a PEA the numbers that we get, the economic numbers and everything we can tell you about the project at that point. But then we'll just move on to continuing that study into a feasibility. We won't do a pre-feas because a smaller project like this doesn't need that. And besides, this project already had a feasibility. So I'll get into that, and then detailed engineering and eventually site preparation and construction. This is our deal with Pan American. So we're paying $15 million for the first 1.25 million ounces. If we have more than that, we'll pay an additional 2.5 million. So if we stay with the current historic resource, we'll be paying just under $21 an ounce. And if we find more than the 1.25, we'll be paying about $14 or less per ounce. Corporate summary, we have a fantastic team, people who've been in the business a long time and have worked in Peru. All of these people are either, well, Wilder's Peruvian, but he's worked all over the world. But all of us have at least 25, 30, 40 years experience, and at least 30 of those in Peru. And then Larry Cornsey, George Elliott, Mario, and Shafika are all very experienced directors. And so I'm very well guided by them, and fantastic to have their support. Shares outstanding. So we do have options and a few warrants that are at 20 cents. And it's fully diluted is 187.7 million. And that's it for now till I get the questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Joanne. All right, we have some audience questions to start off with. I see one here about the cost per meter for the drill program.
Okay, we're estimating $300 a meter all in at this point.
Okay, thank you. And another audience question. The recent results continue to demonstrate both higher grade mineralization and a much larger mineralized footprint. What do you believe the market is still overlooking about Pico Machay that you expect will become clear?
I think as we get our drill permits and get drilling and just keep completing on our timeline and on our planned milestones. As everybody knows, we were at 3.5 cents a year ago, and we had to recover from that. So a lot of people have made money, some pretty good money at this point. And so unfortunately, we have some sellers based on that. I don't think that there's a lot of people that don't believe what we're doing, but it will become more and more compelling as we complete on more and more milestones.
Thank you. And what is the cash position currently? Do you foresee upcoming financing needs?
Well, we'll be financing. We raised $1 million in June, and we will be financing on it, not necessarily on an as-needed basis, but I don't think there's any problem to raise the money we need. Once, for instance, usually I raise money for drilling once I have the drilling permits in hand. Then as soon as we have that drilling happening and update the resource, that's a huge milestone. A PEA is a huge milestone. So it's about, as I said, $300 a meter. So every 3,000 meters is $1 million. And so certainly we'll need money for drilling, and we'll need money as we go, but we'll also be completing on so many news items or milestones that's my what I see for the project. Now, having said that, when markets and also good investors come by or you meet them and they want to have a piece of the company from a financing, then you negotiate financings based on that as well. So it's a question of timing everything.
Wow. Thank you. And I see an audience follow-up question here. Can you remind us how much cash the company currently has and the monthly burn rate?
Well, the cash is under $1 million, but we did just raise that. And the monthly burn rate isn't really a monthly, because we've just done the baseline study for the FTA, and that cost us over $100,000. Met testing to engage in that will cost $125,000 over a year or two. So there's a lot. And then of course there's the drilling, that's $300 a meter. So our actual G&A is pretty minimal. Now our geologists are on staff in Peru, Wilder Garcia, Oswaldo Ramos, and some other people. So definitely have a team that is a burn rate, but it's not a big burn rate if we're not in fact advancing the project. But that's not the point here. We want to be in production as soon as possible. So
got it. Thank you. And I see an audience question that I'll tie another audience question into. Can you remind us of the timelines towards the resource estimate, the PEA, and then I see question here when the technical reports for those would be ready?
Yeah, so it's really just a question of drill permit and then drilling the first only 2,000 meters to update the resource, but we've planned 3,000 meters for that program. So would we wait till the 3,000 meters is drilled? More than likely, but could we stop at the 2,000 as soon as we've done the 10% twinning? And it could be even a little bit less than that because 20,000 meters has been drilled total on the property, but not all of that was in the resource. And the 10% we need to twin is what estimated the resource. So we could stop as soon as we've got that, and certainly we'll be keeping an eye on all of that. I'm hoping, that we can be drilling by the end of August. That's still possible, but that's not a promise. That's our sort of our earliest estimate, because I understand once our FTA application is into the government, it can and recently has been taking as little as 3 weeks to approve. But that's really the key to getting everything going. So get the drilling started, get the resource confirmed. Maybe if we know we've got a chance to upgrade it, of course, we would wait and do a little bit more work and get, a higher resource. And then once that resource is validated in, compliant by 43101, then we can publish a PEA. A lot of the work on the PEA will be done concurrently with the drilling because we're not waiting for that. It's not like we're wondering if we have a resource and wondering how we're going to propose mining this project. Aquiline already did all of that. So the PEA could be out, I'm saying 2 months after the resource. It could be sooner than that. Move on to feasibility, but also keep drilling. So two ways. Get into production as soon as possible. Don't stop and, smell the roses and think about things. We know we've got it, we're very sure we have an economic project. We're going to confirm that, move that towards production as soon as possible, but on the same time, keep exploring other targets.
Got it. Thank you. And another audience question, are there any mills nearby that the company could send mineralization to fast track revenues?
Say that, any mills, did you say?
Yeah, are there any mills nearby that you could send, like what you mine, that's mineralized to fast track revenues?
We want to get the best for the ore body is to heap leach it, starting with the high grade, which at this point is estimated at 0.91. If you start high grading and sending that somewhere else, then you're really messing up your whole mine plan. So it's not worth it.
And taking a step back and kind of taking a look at the geology with, your 2 rounds of sampling now complete, what new insights have you gained into the controls? Has there been anything that kind of surprised your team?
What surprised us the most is the higher grades that we're getting in the underground and even on surface near the underground, and not just in 1 or 2, as you can see. Actually, let me go to the other slide. So if you look at these colors, this whole area is above 2 grams and well above it. And then we have more samples here. And the latest one that we got that was 13.76 grams. Those are really showing some high grades in here. So that's a surprise. But other than that, I would have to say the geological modeling is in progress. Certainly our geologists feel like they're getting a better handle. And if you can imagine, when you drill core, it's a size like this, as opposed to little chips. They're like this. So number one, in RC chips, you're not going to see your geological contacts. You're not going to see a lot of your structures and just so many things you're not going to see. So they did a very good job with what they had, but we're just relogging all that. And then as soon as we drill it with core, we believe we'll have a much better handle on all of that. So we're not there yet, but we also believe that the general mapping was, the overall mapping, I should say, was generalized too much. There are more geological units than one would think. Now, you don't necessarily identify those when you're in the middle of the alteration zone. So you have to do your mapping from far out where the rocks are fresh and then trace them in. And Matthew Melnick already did some of that mapping in 2005. So he's a great insight into some of the structural and stratigraphic differences and controls. But it's a work in progress.
Thank you. And another audience question. Could you rerun the leftover heap leach material through a mill later to recover any leftover gold?
If it's the right component, yes, absolutely. So a mill would be going after sulfides, whereas the heap leaching is going to be going after oxides. So I guess you could, if you had a lot of sulfide material that didn't get leached. Then I would imagine you would. I'm not a metallurgist, but from the discussions I've had, yes, although that's not really the plan. The plan is to heap leach all the oxide and then build a mill for the sulfide.
And much of your current work focuses on validating the historical resource. But you also mentioned untested exploration targets. How do you balance advancing the existing deposit while also pursuing that district scale upside?
Well, I want to see this project in production as soon as possible. So we can't get delayed on getting to production by exploring. But part of it's the permits and getting drilling. And certainly, as I said, we will be, and this is a perfect slide to see all these targets, 5, 6, 1, and 2, especially the ones closer. These are potential resource expansion targets. And so those will be the first ones. And we'll be able to drill. We've targeted some of those with the FTA drilling. So we will be exploring or as soon as we're confirming. Same program. But the balance is, this is not a project to wonder if you might have how many millions of ounces at the end of the day you're going to have. Get it into production as soon as possible. I think high gold prices are here to stay, and certainly I consider $4,000 gold very high. When I started in the business, gold went from $300 up to $800 an ounce, and then back again in my first couple of years. So I know about the variance in prices of gold, but that's why I love this project, is it works at $700 gold. But yeah, it's a balance, because you do want to chase your dreams and find more. And certainly if we believe there's a higher grade target and it could make a difference in the early mine plan, then we would go after that. But we can do that while we're doing all the other work.
Yeah, thank you. And when you compare Pico Machay to other junior gold development projects, what do you believe are its biggest competitive advantages?
All the work that's been done in the past, the historic work, the exploration drilling, exploration on surface, but especially all the engineering studies. So they did, they must have done some pre-feas work, but published is a full feasibility study. And in addition to that, there's an AMEX study that was fatal flaw, kind of trying to tear apart that feasibility study. So taking a look at that, and then already the condemnation drilling. And also the community. The community is very ready for an operation, in their mind at least. They thought Aquiline was going to go into production, and they wanted that. And they see other mines in production around them, and they do get some benefits from them. But this one is closer to a lot of the population. Not that there's a huge population that live out there, but in any event, they're very keen to see us advancing, and that's huge.
Okay, thank you. And we've seen several press releases recently how you've continued adding experienced technical personnel and consultants to the team. What specific expertise have you brought onto the project, and how does that strengthen your ability to move the asset forward? And then what capacity are you still looking to add?
Well, the first one was engaging Adam Johnston, who I'd worked with over at Kenyariaka and some other things, and he has huge experience in these high sulfidation deposits. And the reason he's so key is that recovery is everything. If you can't recover the gold, you're not going to make any money. And so engaging with him and finding out all his other experiences, and we knew each other so well, probably met 30 years ago in Peru. So he was the number one, but he's led a lot of PEAs for other juniors and can help assemble a team. So then he recommended Aaron Goff, who had recently left tech, relocated himself back in Canada, although he's a Peruvian citizen. He spends lots of time in Peru still, Peruvian family. He's very key because permitting and environment and ESG. He was with Toromocho from exploration into production and operations, and they had to move a town, 1,400 people, and he also did worked on Zafranal from exploration, and it's fully permitted for production. Those are key things. Now, we've also in discussions with other people, mining engineers and financial experts who have worked with in the past. So somebody's recently said to me, "You've never built a mine before. What do you think you're doing?" My point is, I'm not going to be the one building the mine. I'm going to assemble the team of mine builders in Peru. But this kind of operation, not big, huge engineering firms. We don't want to over-engineer this.
Got it. Thank you. And previous owners completed engineering studies, based on a gold price of $700 per ounce. Which aspect, based on 4,000 or, current gold price environment, what parts of that historical scope do you think have the most room for improvement?
I'm hoping recoveries. And I'm not really allowed to say too much in that until I have the studies in hand. But certainly in discussing with Adam and others who've worked on these deposits, our goal is to reach 80% recovery, which you can imagine another 10% recovery of your gold would be huge.
And can you remind us of when you expect the drilling to start? And are there any still, critical items that need to be done before that can happen?
Let me just go to my timeline. So I'm hoping we could be drilling by the end of August. That's coming up pretty soon. So that's a big goal, but let's leave it at that. I certainly would be, I can't imagine we're not drilling well before Christmas. And then as soon as we can twin those 10% holes. And what else were you asking me?
Is there anything, still that needs to be done on the ground or
all of these things need to be done. We'll continue we've only did our initial sampling, 197 samples. Now that we know where we got some very nice grades, we'll go back to all these areas. And even though there are some underground workings on a lot of them, we'll maybe do some more trenching or hand digging or just trying to expose things and get a better handle on understanding them before we drill them. And that's the nice thing, is that the first place we'll be drilling is confirming the resource. We know exactly where to go there. But we do have time to work on the exploration targets and further advance them by surface work. Yeah.
Thank you. And while we have the catalyst or the timeline slide open, can you kind of speak to looking at the news items you expect, from now until the end of the year, headed into the beginning of next year? Which ones are you most excited about? Which ones should investors particularly watch out for? Because you do have a lot on.
Yeah. So. Well, starting drilling will be huge. And then confirmation, grade confirmation. If we get to upgrade the resource, we don't have that as a line item here, but it's basically grade confirmation, and then see if we get higher. And then the updated, based on all that, updating the resource, updating the PEA, or complete an updated PEA or a new PEA, whatever you want to call it. And so those are the things that I expect to have done before Christmas, and I'm very excited about, because each one of those things is huge.
Thank you. No, it looks like there'll be lots of news items to watch for headed into the fall and into 2027. I don't have any other questions. Was there anything else you wanted to touch on that we didn't get a chance to cover on?
No, I think they've covered very well. Thank you very much, everybody, for following us today, and and those who will watch this on the recording.
Thank you, Joanne. Thank you to the audience for all the questions. If anybody has any other questions or would like a follow-up, please email info@adcap.ca. And thank you, everybody. Have a great rest of your day. Thank you. Bye.
Thanks very much. Thank you.
Bye.